Sourcing products from China is simple. Just go to Alibaba and you're pretty much done, right? Well, you can do that if you don't mind paying high prices, experiencing excessive lead times, dealing with middlemen, low quality, and possibly even getting scammed. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely not the best way. So in this video, I'm going to cover the ins and outs when it comes to sourcing products from China. So hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. AMZScout is one of the tools that we use for our Amazon business. So if you're not yet familiar with AMZScout, then here's a link where you can try out AMZScout for free of charge. So our topic today is making more money on purchasing. So the ins and outs of sourcing physical products from China. But first, there's actually a really important thing to understand that when we are launching products on Amazon, we're actually sourcing products. There's actually two stages that we divide the sourcing process. So the first is actually the product validation phase. So when we get an idea for a product opportunity, then what is the number one thing that actually matters? So if you think that this is a really good opportunity, so we have done our research, we have really done a good job in building the perfect product blueprint that we actually offer you, then what is the number one thing that we need to do in order to really tap on this opportunity? Well, the number one thing is actually speed. So speed really matters in business. So once we decide that, okay, this is actually the good product opportunity for us, then it's really important that we take the idea to market as quickly as possible, because the real data will come from the experience with real paying customers. So this is really important to get the ideas to the market as quickly as possible. And I can actually tell you that the faster you become at getting your ideas to the market, I mean, the more successful you will become. That's for sure. I mean, absolutely. So we do not want to wait 6 months to wait to get our product perfect and everything. No, I mean, we want to get the validation. I mean, we want to get the real feedback as quickly as possible. So it's important to understand that when we are product validation phase, we don't really get when we are doing the first batch, we don't really care about getting everything perfect, but getting like profitability to the roof. No, I mean, we want to get data as quickly as possible. So that's why we are not going to spend excessive time in negotiations and getting things right. So that's actually why the second stage is profitability. Because what happens is that if we have a product idea and we spend like weeks and weeks just negotiating and really get the best prices and really get the profitability high, but I mean, if something actually goes wrong when we get the product to the market, I mean, maybe we face just some quality issues that really kill the product opportunity, or maybe then the demand is not there where it should be, then I mean, if we are going to make the decision that we're going to kill this product, then I mean, all the time we spend on these negotiations and stuff like that, I mean, it's just waste of time. So that's why we want to get the first batch to Amazon as quickly as possible, and we don't care about getting the highest profits. No, we want to get actually the data. Then the second stage is that once the product has proven itself and we are certain we are not going to kill the product right now, we are going to be ordering like second, third batch and so on, then comes the time to increase profitability. So that's the time we can actually spend more time in negotiating for the best price and coming up with creative solutions how to really get the purchasing cost as low as possible. And there's a saying that money is made in the purchasing and not in the sale, and that's really spot on. But if we try to spend like too much time on these negotiations too early, before the product is really validated. And then, I mean, if we are not going to be continuing with that product, then it's pretty much like a waste of time, right? Makes sense? But the thing is that product quality must always be in place when we are selling on Amazon. So we cannot sell any crap on Amazon. So that goes without saying that product quality must be there. But yeah, so China, sourcing from China. So one thing to understand is that China is a big country, and one of the first products we actually ordered back in 2014, and I mean, at that time we didn't, I mean, this was one of the first products, and we had zero experience on this, and we had actually chosen a supplier. And by the time that we actually sent the quality inspection company there, then the quality inspection company asked like, do you realize where your supplier is? I mean, this is middle of nowhere. I mean, it's gonna take ages to get there, and it's gonna be it's like a complete rural with bad roads and everything. So we had actually chosen a supplier that was far away from any kind of easy access. So that's definitely one mistake we didn't realize. So at that time we didn't realize that China is a big country, and there are certain areas that are focused on different things. So depending on which the category your products are, then you're likely to find the like best suppliers from certain area. So here you can see different categories like furniture, rubber, stainless steel, titanium products, phosphorochemicals, motorcycles, Chinese liquor, shoes, machinery, electronics, linen products, magnesium, and so on. So we can see that, I mean, certain categories are made in certain places. And once, one of the first times when we visited China, I mean, it was in a place called Yiwu, and that's an area which is basically focused on selling different kinds of toys and different kind of plastic products. So it really matters that once we figure out that, well, once we find a supplier for our products, then it's important that we actually see that, take a look at this map and see that where are they located. Are they actually located in the best possible area? So as mentioned, there are actually many sourcing options, so you don't need to go to Alibaba necessarily. And the thing to understand is that, okay, in the first stage, when we just are in a hurry and we need to get the idea to the market as quickly as possible, then fine. I mean, it doesn't really matter where we source the products, because we are still in the product validation phase, so, and we need to get our idea live as quickly as possible. But as soon as we the product has validated itself and we have moved on to increasing profitability states, then we should definitely look into different kinds of options. So I mean, here we see a bunch of different options. So you can actually see that, I mean, it is not, China is not limited to Alibaba, and Alibaba is just a small business platform. It's a platform for middlemen. So if you're using it, it's important to understand that you're more likely to pay higher prices, and you're likely that you're dealing with middlemen, you're dealing with trading agents. That's not likely to get you the best prices. Actually, you're more likely to, pretty much without doubt, you're going to be paying higher prices if you are using Alibaba. So where should we source products from then? I mean, yeah, I mean 1688, that's just the Chinese version of Alibaba. But again, that's just one of the options that there are. So we can see here that there's many different sites, there's many different options that we can use, including even like specific grade source. And there's a couple of saying when it comes to sourcing products from China. First one is that, I mean, as a foreigner, we are going to be paying higher prices. So that's why, for example, I have like Chinese people in my team who are doing the sourcing for us. So if there's a huge difference whether I, as a foreigner, I mean a Westerner, go to these suppliers and ask for prices, where versus like actually my Chinese team member who is Chinese and understands the culture and everything. I mean, she will get so much better pricing than I do. And second saying is that if you actually get quoted in US dollars, then you have already lost. That's really spot on as well. So we need to understand that in order to get the best prices, it's simply a necessity to use like Chinese local people who understand the culture and know how it actually works. But unless you're launching products like every single month, it doesn't really make sense that you would hire like a full-time sourcing agent, right? So in that kind of phase, it actually makes more sense to use freelancers. It makes more sense just to do it yourself. But yeah, okay, so how do we actually connect with the suppliers? Well, in China, everyone has WeChat. I mean, even taxi drivers, in a taxi, you can just pay like using WeChat. So WeChat is used everywhere, and that's like everyone has access to it. And it's kind of like this social media of China, and pretty much everything goes through WeChat. Of course, so that pretty much everything can be observed. But that's a different topic. It makes sense that we use WeChat and we do video calls with suppliers. And we actually want to be presented as sophisticated customers, and we don't want to write extensive long emails. We want to keep it brief and use a website and business email address, and then pretty much like reduce the amount of context and prepare this checklist to specify the quality requirements. It's important to remember in China that quality doesn't really mean anything, but it depends. Good quality for what? So quality is subjective and depends. So we have to be super careful in explaining that what are the expectations and requirements that we have in terms of quality. So here's some things to remember that, I mean, different kind of batches that you have, for example, in Alibaba, they don't really mean anything. So gold verified batches, I mean, in Alibaba actually those can be bought. Yeah, it can be. So I mean, it's more of a question like, okay, how well the supplier understands our needs, and we have to do some preliminary background checks on suppliers using their, for example, their business license as the basis. And another question to consider is that, is the supplier really specialized in this product? Because if they're doing tons of different categories and tons of different products, then I mean, if this is not really their area of speciality, then probably we shouldn't be ordering from them. So anyway, here's an example of Chinese business license, and of course, I mean, they can be fabricated. So we actually need to check that this is legit, and when the supplier presents us business license, then we actually need to make sure that it is what it says. So we have to make sure that the addresses, categories, and registers, and the QR code that it all matches to the supplier, so that they are what they claim to be. But anyway, so next question is how to approach suppliers. I mean, questions to use. So just some common questions are like, okay, how long has it been in business? Asking the copy of the business license. What's the primary product line, how many people they have employed, and how many employees work in the manufacturing sector, not in sales, not in customer service, but actually in the manufacturing. Because that's the thing that's going to determine what kind of lead time are we actually going to be getting. And is the equipment they use their own, or where is it from? Asking the catalog, which port they ship from, what's the nearest port, do they have an export license? And key thing about export licenses that, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like red flag if they don't have export license. No, it just might be that they are just not specialized into that. They are not specialized into export. Then the quality control, I mean, the quantity and location of quality control checkpoints are really crucial. So find out what happens to the parts that are returned. Then what are the sales comparing the domestic and international marketplaces? So where do they actually primarily export to, how much goes to US, how much goes to Europe, and knowledge of all these expert standards. So I mean, are they familiar with the rules in this given market? For example, if you are selling in Amazon.com US, I mean, do they actually know what are different requirements in the US for this product in question? Have they recently been into trade show, and which ones? Is there like bill of materials for the products? What do they actually do in-house? What are they actually outsourcing? And what are the terms of payment? And this is actually where the relationship comes from, because the better relationship we have with the supplier, then better terms we will get for the payments. I mean, we have had many cases where the suppliers has actually already shipped out the goods and we haven't paid pretty much like anything. We haven't paid the remaining amount. What are the payment methods, the contracts, testing, certificates, samples for inspection? Then thing is that whenever we ask for samples, I mean, we should ask for multiple samples, and when we ask for multiple samples from many different suppliers, then it's actually good to combine those and just make one shipment, so you will actually save money in terms of shipping. Then we just examine the samples carefully and pick the supplier that we want to be collaborating with. We want to be bargaining with pretty much like 20 different options to deal with, and we also need to consider the financial forecasting and prepare the contracts, and then consider the logistics with air or sea shipments. Then obviously number one thing is price. What kind of prices are we getting? Then the payment terms, minimum order requirements, lead time, quality inspections, contracts. And how can we actually get a better price? So we need to select our optimal target price that we are going after. So always discuss the quality criteria of the product with the supplier. I mean, it's important that we present ourselves as a business, because Chinese suppliers are considerably more likely to negotiate with the company than with an individual. So we don't want to indicate that we have a limited budget or are just picking it out, because I mean, we will seem like tire kickers, and it's pretty much so that nobody wants to deal with tire kickers, right? And you can ask the supplier to call you to really set the tone. So how can we actually create leverage? I mean, first of all, we need to get several bids for the same product from at least 20 suppliers and prepare this data for the suppliers and pretty much like bid them against each other. And of course, whenever we get a price, we should say, we should be in shock, like, oh my god, this is such a high price. I mean, oh my goodness. So we want to understand what is the driving factor behind this such a high cost, and then we want to be able to demonstrate that we are aware of the we want to be able to demonstrate that we are aware of the rivals, because we know what kind of price that market actually has. And we can of course offer to split the refunds regarding the taxes, and always we should discuss like a long-term relationship and pretty much like identify all the product components and their corresponding costs. So this goes back to saying that we want to understand that how this price is actually built. How did they come up with this given price? And if we are coding Xworks, then just ask it to be converted to FOB. And depending on the item, we should ask spare parts in case of warranty. And always, I mean, in China, it's a lot of it comes down to relationship. And I remember like many times, like whenever we have met suppliers in China, and they always want to take us out to dinner and get completely wasted. That's pretty amusing to watch and experience. So it's all about relationship, long-term collaboration. So those are the things that we really want to emphasize. So we want to create this fear of missing out. FOMO works also in this case. So we want to talk about competition we must be always be willing to leave the table, because the one who's willing to leave to walk has the biggest leverage. So we want to be that person. So then quality, I mean, we have to come up with a clear checklist how this quality is actually measured. What are the things that we need to check? Then, I mean, we can do factory audits and examine all these different raw materials and do different kind of examinations. But I mean, the least we should do is this before shipment examination. So before the goods leave the supplier, we should definitely do inspection for every single batch. I mean, we have also sometimes cut corners and avoided doing these inspections, but usually in many of the cases it just ends up hurting us. So personally, I have learned my lesson to inspect every single shipment, and then use only these well-known international quality check firms, quality inspection firms, because it's pretty common that they might do some deal with the supplier, so we definitely want to avoid that. So let's talk about supplier sourcing formula. So I mean, okay, we find these suppliers from local websites and networks, and we do this due diligence and background checks and inspections, and we meet with the owners and administrations, like when we are thinking long term, when we actually want to build a relationship with the supplier. And I mean, we want to request always like multiple samples from multiple different suppliers. Then we just examine the quality, compare the prices, minimum order quantities, delivery time, and ensure that the supplier can produce high quality products and can actually commit to the lead time that they give. So then we just describe and validate the product specifications and negotiate prices, terms of payment and lead times, and provide quality assurance checklists and negotiate this in protection in terms of intellectual property and all the different contracts. So I mean, once we have done this, then we just proceed to production. So we are going to be performing like numerous quality control inspections, and the least minimum you should do is before the shipment. But what we can also do is that and what we have done many times, that we actually send these items to laboratory testing to make sure that the certifications and test like documents they give, that they actually are valid, so they actually are what they are claiming to be. Then I mean, these pre-shipping quality check inspections, then using a freight forwarder, pay the account balance and ship items and receive products and profitably just sell them. That's it, right? So let's do a bit of a recap. So even if you're just starting out, we must like give an impression that I mean, we are a real business and we have been doing this for a long time, because we want to be seen as a serious buyer. So we don't want to be seen as a tire kicker, but because nobody wants to deal with tire kickers, I mean us included, right? And let's use WeChat and let's do calls to really gain like trust, which is pretty much like both ways. I mean, they will trust us and we will trust them, and always be focused on building long term. And whenever sourcing from China, I mean, our requirements have to be crystal clear, so we clearly describe the size, quantity and color criteria, and by asking specific questions we are able to give this impression that we are a professional in this area, and we can also distinguish between the providers who can communicate well and those who do not. And that's really a key criteria in when selecting suppliers. I mean, they have to be communicating well, because otherwise how can we build a long-term relationship with someone who cannot communicate clearly, because otherwise it will just not work. And one thing we should always avoid is immediately asking this minimum order quantity, because it just seems so unprofessional if we are just, first question is, okay, what's the minimum order quantity? And that doesn't give an impression that I mean, it gives an impression that we are just tire kickers. We are just asking, okay, what's the MOQ? So I mean, clearly we are doing this for the first time. So that doesn't give a good impression. And typically suppliers, I mean, real factories are only interested in working with large corporations. So I mean, don't even waste your time with their inquiries. So Yiwu, Guangzhou, Shenzhen are the best supplier locations to do this kind of research campaign. And as mentioned, we are a real company, and when building, I mean, when doing business for long term, we want to actually use a local sourcing agent who can I mean, get us really best pricing and really teach us in understanding better the Chinese culture. So this pretty much sums it up in a nutshell. Good luck sourcing from China. If you like this topic, then hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And we actually have a closed secret group where we are discussing pretty much everything related with this topic and everything related with Amazon and building a business, building a team, and so on. So if you would like to get access to this closed secret group, then just comment group, and we are going to be reaching out to you to add you to the group. See you there.